This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on sustainable development through green energy projects. The participants are Narendra Taneja, energy expert, and Elap Srivastav, journalist.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in Gujarat today. This was in connection with a slew of development work that he inaugurated. The event was in Dhorodo in Kutch area and also at so many other locations in the same region of Kutch. And the PM inaugurated desalination plant, hybrid renewable energy park, a fully automated milk processing and packaging plant. Whenever we talk about clean energy, green energy, very recent event of the Prime Minister last month inaugurating a global renewable energy investment summit, and that was also an expo that was abbreviated as Reinvest 2020. He inaugurated that, and the theme for this particular event was sustainable energy transition as to how India goes ahead with harnessing the renewable energy power. Mr. Taneja, we are the fourth largest in the world in terms of renewable power capacity, and we are growing very fast. This very event that took place in Gujarat today and the renewable and clean energy project, I think these go hand in hand when we look at future development work for the country and for the society.
Absolutely. You see, the event today or the investment summit that you were referring to is basically a series of such events and such developments we have seen in the country since 2014. Since 2014, we have seen that in terms of development, the focus of the government has been very, very clear. The focus is that we want sustainable development, a development which is not at the cost of environment or ecology, and a development which is long-term. And there, the government reached to this conclusion that unless we really push ahead with green energy agenda very aggressively, we'll not be able to get there. And therefore, the agenda basically is going in two directions. Number one is to push green energy. And number two is whatever area you talk about is the sustainable development, whether it's in construction or it's in infrastructure or in transport or even in the armed forces. Everywhere you see the focus is on sustainable development. That's why you see that our forest cover has increased. And overall, when it comes to emission intensity, it's already managed to cut by 21%, which is a kind of global record.
These goals, as you said, are different fields, whether it's in different infrastructure creation of the country. But the targets that India has taken vis-a-vis the kind of facilities that we are creating, even the projects that were inaugurated in Gujarat today, are these targets too ambitious? How do you see India marching ahead in this context?
When you look at the project, the kind of goals we have set for ourselves, for instance, the objective is now to have 175 gigawatt by end of 2022. And if you look at 2030, which is in about 10 years, our target for renewable energy is 450 gigawatt. Very, very ambitious. The entire world is very ambitious, but you look at India's track record of last 5-6 years, we have delivered on every single commitment made to the Indian community, Indian nation, at the global community in terms of that. In the process, we have generated business prospects in India which are like 1.5 lakh crore every year. We have attracted investment worth $64 billion the past 6 years. So this clearly shows that is very well thought, is very well meditated, and is being done with tremendous killer instinct. Because let's not forget one thing. Our commitment to green energy, to sustainable development is because thus we care for the globe. But more importantly, we care for our own people. You see, we are a densely populated country, and growth is a kind of necessity as far as we are concerned. And we have realized if we go for a reckless development at the cost of environment, at the cost of the health of the people, at the cost of contaminating air, water, and our rivers, our oceans, our mountains, that's not the kind of development people want. So therefore, the commitment is to go for a sustainable development, at the same time to push green energy, because we have seen the role of energy, how you produce energy, is critical when it comes to maintaining sustainable development and achieving this goal.
When we were listening to the Prime Minister, one incident that he mentioned while he was the Chief Minister of the state, he did say that when it was a demand in the region of Kutch, a very simple demand that the people wanted to have electricity during dinner time. So how do you see the kind of demands that can be met by new and renewable energy, clean energy, and the kind of carbon footprint that we can reduce? And can India take leading position in that?
When you look at, for instance, the area the Prime Minister visited, which was, of course, his home state, Kutch area, solar radiation Kutch is among the best in the world, which means that you can capture solar power at a very, very economical setting. And that means you can produce it at a very minimum cost and at the same time go for the growth and development of that area. And when it comes to the entire look at India's geography, there are many pockets in our geography where the solar radiation is at par with the very best in the world. So those areas were neglected. For instance, when the Prime Minister Narendra Modi government came to power in 2014, still have roughly 300 million people in India without electricity. Large number of villages were without electricity. And the share of solar energy in India's energy basket was so small that you could hardly talk about it. So it was a neglected area. While at the same time, we wasted so much of solar energy because we have this very, very high quality and good solar radiation in the country. And since the government has focused, you have seen the results. And that's precisely what the Prime Minister is referring to, that at the time when you have this plenty of energy available in terms of solar radiation, but people didn't have electricity. They couldn't have their dinner with electricity on or the bulbs on. And that is what has been changed. So it's just one example. There are millions such examples, for instance, where our children had to go to sleep early just because there was no power. Lots of people have no information, no access to television, no access to clean fuel for cooking, no access to fuel for irrigation, solar pump for irrigation, so on and so forth, when there was so much of energy available. So that's why those are the kind of developments you have seen since 2014. And today, the whole world is looking at India for providing leadership. And precisely the reason that when you look at intergovernmental global organization called International Solar Alliance, which is now headquartered in India at Gurgaon near Delhi, and that has become the focal point for giving a major push to solar energy development across the world, most particularly in developing countries.
In the similar state, if we talk about the non-fossil fuel-based power generation capacities, India has achieved some good amount of credits in this sector in the last about 5 to 6 years. How do you see going forward, and even in the times of post-COVID world, where we are now looking at harnessing more of clean energy, more of less petrol or diesel-based vehicles? How do you see that thing?
You see, when you look at the share of renewable energy in India's energy mix today, it's about in the region of 36%, which is fantastic. If you look at the story started rather recently. At the same time, the role of green energy is so important. As I said, that you can go for development, you can go for creating a kind of city, urban life or rural life in such a way that it has practically no cost in terms of damage to health, damage to water, damage to your soil. That's why the government has also come out with a policy, because the transport sector is a major sector which consumes fossil fuels that you refer to. And that's why the government is pushing for electric vehicles, electric mobility. Electric mobility by 2030, the agenda is basically to go for sustainable development, especially in the context of transport in urban areas, which is mostly electric. Electric mobility is a major thrust area for this government, and at the same time producing electricity, mainly using renewable sources of energy, so that particularly in the rural areas are absolutely clean in terms of the quality of air and the quality of soil, so that farmers and rural economy can make the best use of it. So overall, if you look at that, similarly, you're going for inland waterways, you go for coastal areas, tremendous focus. The coastal areas, the government has come out with a new policy which is attracting a lot of foreign attention, and that is to set up power plants along the coast in water, which means these will be basically offshore areas where solar power will be developed, offshore where wind energy will be developed, and wind energy farms will be set up in the sea. And you can produce this electricity along the Indian coast, which is one of the largest in the world. It's about close to 5,000 to 6,000 kilometers, and then bring that electricity to the hinterland and connect it with the grid. So overall, if you look at sustainable development, whether it is solar or wind or it's hydro or it is even nuclear power, tremendous focus. The whole agenda is that by 2050, India is getting most of its electricity from renewable sources of energy and sources which do not pollute at all. At the same time, create more jobs, because once you have electricity available in rural areas in particular at affordable prices, that will stimulate economy, industrialize the area in such a way that there will be no pollution, and create millions and millions of new jobs. And rural areas economy in particular will be completely transformed into a developed economy.
The government's impetus on Atmanirbhar Bharat, the self-reliant India, we are seeing that different challenges have emerged. The economy is being tried to revive, trying to move the wheels of the economy as good as it was pre-COVID times. So how important is the role of the clean energy, new and renewable energy, and the kind of commitment that India has given, as you mentioned earlier?
Well, when you look at COVID-19, the way India has managed COVID-19 and the way, for instance, the government is now trying to manage the vaccine campaign across the country, the clear lesson is that if you as a nation, you set a goal and you go after to achieve it, you can do it. and you can do it within a time frame. The same goes when you look at there are many lessons that India has learned from COVID-19. Two bigger lessons are that A, we got to be self-reliant, Atmanirbhar. Number two is that we got to take a good care of our environment and our forests and our nature. So these are two important lessons India has learned. Look at, for instance, Atmanirbhar Bharat. 90% of equipments we are using even today for producing solar power used to come from China. The government decided, no, that's not good. That's a compromise with energy security. And why can't we manufacture these equipment in India, solar power production? So today, for instance, that's being transformed. And the agenda is in the coming few years, not only this thing will become self-reliant with solar power equipment, we will actually become a major export hub. And the same goes for turbine, for conventional power. The same goes for other equipment when it comes to transmission and generation of power. So across the board, Atmanirbhar Bharat is a major thrust area since COVID. COVID has taught us that don't be dependent on import for critical areas like sustainable development and energy, whether renewable or conventional energy. Never ignore nature. Never ignore your mountains. Never ignore your forests. Never ignore your rivers, your oceans. So these are two important lessons. And if you look at the government of India's policy since COVID, there's been a major shift, a tremendous focus on Atmanirbhar Bharat, and also be extremely sensitive to how you take care of nature. You are so abundantly blessed with.
Do you think the kind of business and the industry requirements that are needed to build such an infrastructure, the research and development institutions and the activities and the think tanks, does India possess them? How fast or how is the country ensuring that we have kind of research and development capabilities to ensure that we have a sustained growth, a momentum of a new and renewable energy of various forms? In water or maybe through the electric power system or through any other systems that the wind power or the solar power, as you mentioned?
In the sense that in many areas we have already built the capacity. For instance, in wind energy, we are almost self-reliant. In solar also, we are doing pretty well now in the sense that we just didn't pay attention to it. Don't want to get into politics, but the previous government, irrespective of who was in power. Now, since this government, things dramatically changed. There's a lot of focus on building this capacity. Research and development, we need to invest more. When it comes to research and development in renewable energy or even in conventional energy, we need to invest more. We have invested quite sufficiently, for instance, in hydro and also in nuclear energy. Nuclear energy, we are a leader. But then nuclear energy is future. 2050 and beyond, nuclear energy is going to be a major player and together with solar in India's energy mix. And we have invested heavily in, and we are doing pretty well. We are a world leader in nuclear R&D. But in conventional energy, in solar, we need to invest more. The government has set up more institutes, actually allocated more funds and research and development. We will achieve self-reliant in research and development in renewable energy within next 5 to 6 years, and also hopefully self-reliant when it comes to the manufacturing capacity.
What can be the short-term and the long-term goals for the country, and how do you see the people's participation in this?
Two important things here. Number one is that we still have a large number of people who have access to energy, but they don't have access to sufficient amount of energy. We have roughly 500 million people who need more energy. They get more energy or the same amount of energy or the per capita energy consumption goes up. Amount of energy that, for instance, people consume in Delhi is about 8,000 to 9,000 megawatts. Compare that with Uttar Pradesh, which is home to 22 crore people, and is much lower. Per capita energy consumption in Delhi and Bombay is many times higher than Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Bengal, and many other states. We need to work on it and make sure that people in other parts of the country, especially in rural area, they have access to more energy and at affordable price. That will change their lifestyle, that will change their economy, that will change the way they look at everything. So I think that's a very, very important area. Secondly, when we look at the whole picture, we have to go for development in such a way that is more decentralized. Especially when it comes to renewable energy, we should encourage our villages to set up their own manufacturing facilities, producing facilities for solar power, so that they can produce solar power at their own price and distribute it in their own way. Especially when it comes to renewable, we need more decentralization. People's participation will come automatically. Energy is one sector, which, for instance, needs more decentralization and also needs more practicing of energy democracy. And I think this government, with solar in particular, the government is taking strong steps in that direction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taneja.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on sustainable development through green energy projects. The participants were Narendra Taneja, energy expert, and Nilab Srivastav, journalist. The program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. The program is also available on our website, newsonair.com. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.